Back in the 80s, children's movies could be a lot more traumatic. I remember being scared of a lot of children's movies when I was in single digits, around like 7 or 8, 6 years old. And back in the 80s, we had these PG rated movies that your parents would think were, perfectly fine for children, but they were extremely like scary, bleak. A great example would be Return to Oz. Is anyone old enough to remember that crap? And it's like these people with buzzsaws on their hands, and it looks like an acid trip. It just makes you really uncomfortable. It's extremely unpleasant, but it was PG. And I contrast movies like that to kids' movies or PG movies today. And it would be something like Minions, those things like the Tic Tac people. And I'm sure everyone knows what they are. I try to avoid them. And it's more like the movie is made for a 6-year-old, but only for them, and that parents don't really have much at all to get out of it, except for some like very strategically placed cultural references. And I'm thinking of the bad guy from Despicable Me 3. It's just like, oh, he's wearing hammer pants. Like, haha. You know what I mean? It's not like it was a movie made for the whole family, or a movie that was made for, like, so that everyone could get something out of it. It's more that it's made for the babies, and then occasionally the parents get to laugh at some snarky cultural reference they might remember. They'll do like the dun-dun from Law and Order, and you'll be like, ha ha. Anyway, it's... back in 1984, they had to create the PG-13 rating because of this, contrast. Because in 1984, on one glorious weekend, they released Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins, and Ghostbusters. I know, right? And it's like I would never leave. I would be going to the movies every night. You know what I mean? I was only 1 year old, or however old I was, but if I was as old as I am now, you wouldn't see me. They'd be like, oh, Tom's at the movies. He's going to see Ghostbusters again. He loves that shit. Anyway, but parents really complained. They were like, it's not quite an R. It doesn't have fuck words and things like that. But the level of violence, or adult themes, as they call them, Venkman and Dana floating over the bed, stuff like that. It's that where parents are kind of covering their kids' eyes and going, don't ask me about sex later, okay? And there were a lot of PG movies back then that said fuck. Believe it or not, I think there's 3 or 4. The most famous ones are Beetlejuice.
Nice fucking model!
And Spaceballs.
Here. Out of order! Fuck! Even in the future, nothing works!
And Spaceballs is my favorite one. The one where he goes like, fuck, even in the future, nothing works. I use that all the time. Beetlejuice, of course, was the one where your parents were like, if you say nice effing model, I will kill you. You know what I mean? And believe me, none of the minions are going to say nice fucking model. I've been waiting for it. None of the Toy Story people are going to go like, fuck, even in the future, nothing works. It's just not going to happen. Things have changed. For the better, I give you. And now, I'm getting to the point of this whole video. I know it's taken me a while. One of the most traumatic children's movies I can think of back then was The Secret of NIMF. And I couldn't watch it all the way through. I still can't. It's too sad. It starts out with a Disneyfied mouse, right? And her husband is dead. And she's kind of like figuring out how she's going to carry on without her husband. And now she's trying to help her community of hyper-intelligent rats avoid a lawnmower. That's the movie. It's like her husband died and she's trying to protect what she has left from this lawnmower. It's like, as a kid, I was always crying whenever it was on. And I'm like, I'd rather watch Looney Tunes or the Three Stooges. So that was always my preference, was Looney Tunes and Three Stooges when I was a little boy. Those reruns of like the older stuff. And I remember The Secret of NIMF was on Disney once, and I've tried to let it go since then. And it's funny how in my research for my channel, I was looking up the John Calhoun, or I think that's his name, the John Calhoun rat utopia experiments. And it's like back in 1947 in Virginia. 1947. How's that fit in with your post-war commie conspiracies, Mandrake?
You know when fluoridation first began?
No, I don't yet.
1946. 1946, Mandrake. How does that coincide with your post-war commie conspiracy, huh?
He was working on rats in a farm, or a farmhouse, where he basically played God for them. And he secluded them from the outside world, but he kept them safe from predators. He kept them perfectly climate controlled. He gave them exactly the food they would need and when they asked for it. They would have to go to a specific room in their enclosure that was for food, for bedding, for whatever, and they would take it away. And the experiment started in 1947, and they continued into while John Calhoun was working for NIMH. NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health. So what do you think the Secret of NIMF is referring to? And so the book, or the movie, The Secret of NIMF, is about a bunch of hyper-intelligent rats that are trying to stay underground and avoid being found out for being super intelligent. They don't want the humans to know that they're as intelligent as the humans. And so John Calhoun was doing these experiments on rats at the actual NIMH back in 1954. And they continued well into the 60s. And it was supposedly until the day he died. And I'm just making this video because I was struck with that's the real secret of NIMH. It's very rarely right out in the open like that. So I think truthers and truth channels, I'm sure there are other videos about this. But I just thought that other truthers and truth channels and people who are interested in lifting the veil, that sometimes it's literally in the title. Sometimes it's like The Secret of NIMH, The Secret of the National Institute of Mental Health, where they performed a bunch of rat experiments for decades. I don't know. And maybe that's what you would do. And maybe that's what you were supposed to do, is you're supposed to look up The Secret of NIMH and go, oh, that's The Secret of NIMH. They did a bunch of rat experiments. So, truthers, people like me, like these sort of Hollywood PI types, these Big Lebowski types, these dudes, throw out the ringer. That's about my level of the level of my channel. God damn it, Walter.